Welcome to Hearing God in Scripture.
Yes. Welcome to Hearing God. We don't never have any idea when we start and when we go. There's a few things that we need to talk about. Hold on where we're at because somebody wrote a couple things that even though I wrote back, I want to talk about them because talking is a little easier.
Yep.
Somebody says, well, I don't understand. How do you say it? I don't understand the scriptures, or I have a hard time reading because I don't understand them.
I don't understand the Scriptures, so I don't read.
Right. And that's really why we're doing what we're doing. Because you really should, and you can. And there's a story in the book, The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck.
Okay.
And he's a psychologist, and it's a famous book from the 70s or maybe 80s. And he says, he's at one point he's going and he says, I'm just not mechanically inclined. He was walking past his neighbor and he looked up and he saw this person fixing their lawnmower. And he says, wow, that's amazing because I don't get it. I'm just not mechanically inclined. And the guy turned around and said, that's because you don't slow down enough.
Which is something we always talk about here.
Right. And he was sort of like, all right. But, sort of a little offended, but he took it in and went on. And that day he was at his doctor. He had a client. And when the client left, she went to her car and the emergency brake was stuck. And he says, well, let me see what I can do. So he gets underneath underneath the dashboard. And he looks up and the first thing he sees is everything, everywhere.
Yep.
And he's like, all right. This is why I'm not any good. But then he slows down, like that guy said, and he starts and he sees the cable from the emergency brake and he follows it to, the pedal that puts it on all that stuff. And he sees it's disconnected. He's like, look at that. And my reason for bringing this up is it's a great picture of exactly what we talk about here.
Yeah.
Because we make up and you come up, I watch these guys spiritualize and almost because they don't spend the time. I had a discussion with my class and they had a discussion back with me about, and a lot of people wrote about it, about spiritualizing. And I said, quit spiritualizing. You don't need to.
It is spiritual.
It is. And if you spiritualize it, you get a little goofy with it.
Yeah.
And we don't need to get goofy. It's so good. And your job is to say, okay, God, let's hear it. So that is the process where you slow down and say, okay. And you get some help. Doing it together is a big deal, right?
Yeah. Like I always say, right? It's just, I tend to hear more when we're talking and like, oh, that didn't stand out when I was reading it, the 6 times.
Right. And you're learning to do it too.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. The other thing is, and one of the reasons I do this is what I believe ought to happen in church, where one of the major jobs of the leaders is to help people learn how to read, I think, and hear God when you read. But beyond that, they asked another question about the King James Version.
Yes.
And I think it's an important discussion because for a long time, and I know, listen, if I read the King James, it's not quite our English today. So it can be confusing. It is meet for us to be here today. What does that mean? But, and so that's why we are doing new translations. I'm going to do a new translation. I have to get my plane ticket. But the King James was an excellent, one of the best translations at the time, 1611, when it was made.
Oh, wow. It's that old.
It's that old. And the language has changed significantly.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we do new translations. And more than that, not just language has changed, we've gotten more manuscripts, many more manuscripts. For pity's sake, the Dead Sea Scrolls showed up in 1948,
Yeah.
And but lots of new manuscripts, which we compare, and we're always in the comparison, so we try to make our versions better. Now, that being said, I read something which I found interesting because my complaints about translations all the time. And in Robert Alter, in his I'm going to call it a translation of Genesis, he has an intro where he talks about translations. And he talks about that we use what's called dynamic equivalent, and that kind of hurts the translation. because we don't say, for example, the word seed, I think I've talked about it. The word seed is very important. And in the Bible, the seed, it says it right in the beginning. Her seed will crush your head, stuff like that. And Abraham's seed, but often it's translated differently because they say, well, here it means ancestors, here it means, son, or here it means child. And so you don't get the idea that he's playing with the word seed. And if they use it in conjunction with each other, you miss the picture, right? You miss what the author is trying to say because they're doing some literary language use. And it's hard to do, granted, but still, one of the things that the King James did very well was they tried as much as possible not to change some of those things and kept the language similar so you could follow the author's train of thought in terms of how they used the language.
And how they used it in whatever language they were writing, right?
Right. Well,
better
English.
Well,
I mean, they're old.
No, there's Hebrew and Greek, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So depending on which one, but like we've talked about, some words get moved in front and back,
Right.
and sometimes that makes a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to say that King James, in one sense, is outdated in terms of language, but still the language is beautiful. And the reason we speak a lot of the things we do today is because of the King James Version of the Bible. You think about some of those things that they said, and we say them, and our language is still changing, and yet King James was a huge influence on us. And it's still a great translation for a lot of reasons. I think there's other translations that can be good. It's certainly not the authorized one. The Paul didn't use it, for example. Yeah. But it's good, very good. So I just wanted to say that, so a little bit of background.
And we have apps on our Bible. I need to respond and say, hey, you check out the Bible app.
Right.
Then you can download whichever version.
And you can read different versions. All right. So now let's get into this passage.
So we are going to dissect in real time today 31 through 47
of John chapter 5, right?
Yes. John chapter 5, 31 through 47.
And I have not read this anytime recently. So,
and I've been reading it.
Right.
And recently went to chapter 6. So
okay, good.
Yep.
Oh, great. But you were stuck on, or you were really interested in what attracted you was those last couple verses.
Yes, where he references Moses.
Right. So talk just about 46 and 47. Just read those verses.
So Jesus says, if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But since you do not believe what he wrote, how are you going to believe what I say?
Right. Mine says almost same thing. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? That's a very interesting passage, huh?
And something else is standing out to me, which I find interesting.
That you didn't think before?
No, I didn't think before. How are you going? Since you do not believe what he wrote. So he's almost saying, because they aren't believing him, therefore they don't believe the Old Testament and what was written about him, which I didn't catch before. But he's saying they don't believe in the Old Testament, essentially, right?
Essentially.
He's like, you don't believe the Old Testament then.
Right. Well, and that is going to be really challenging to us because here's a group of people. I mean, he talks about them being the Jews. And he's not talking about every Jew. It's a connection that we would generally want to refer to as like Pharisees, although it's bigger than Pharisees and it's bigger and also smaller than Pharisees. It's a group of people who were opposed to Jesus, and John particularly refers to them as the Jews.
And I did notice that,
right?
That it wasn't just the Pharisees; it was Jews. Yeah,
right. And so it's not all the Jews. Clearly, John distinguishes this group from the mass of people who are in Judea, the Jews. So he comes here and he says this thing, because think about how important this is. He's confronting them about what they think they believe.
But what they think they believe.
Would you say that these Jews, who we will describe as, Pharisees and other scholarly or at least studying and worshiping and believing Jews, do you think, that's the group that's coming against him, and he's saying, you don't believe Moses.
Yeah, and the verse before, it talks about your accuser is Moses.
Right? Wow. This could be dangerous. You sure you want to talk about this?
Well, that's why I brought it up, because, just looking at it, it's wondering, like, what does this mean? Because those things stood out to me, but, what does Jesus talking about essentially claiming to be God in here, right? If you didn't believe Moses, then you don't believe me. Moses
Right.
talked
I'm
about
not sure
me.
that's yeah.
So
sure. It ultimately works out that way, because he's talking about being the one, the seed, the Messiah, that the Old Testament's always talking about. And you're absolutely right. Of course, it works out to being him being God. But
So maybe that's where I get distracted a little bit from what the text is actually saying.
Right. You have to be careful there. What is it saying? You didn't believe them, so you don't believe me, because he wrote about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize then you're going back and saying, what is that? That's what I find just so fascinating, because, for example, I'm teaching Old Testament all over the place, and it's fun. But what we're seeing is for example, the suffering servant in Isaiah 53. It would be one of the examples. Obviously 53 is the messianic passage, but but we see it in so many other places where you see this picture of Jesus in the Old Testament, and it's pointing to this one who will fulfill, who will do what we are unable to do, who will complete, who will take us beyond, and that's what Moses is saying too. He's saying, yeah, we blow it. I blew it. I didn't get to go in the promised land, all that stuff, because I was stupid and I responded to stupid people, whatever. But there's one who fulfills for us. And Moses, the writer of Pentateuch, my opinion, talks about, for example, when Abraham cuts those animals. We talked about that, right?
Nope.
Oh, we should sometime. When he does the covenant with God, God says, go get these animals. So he gets the animals, and God, it doesn't say that the passage says God said, cut them up. He just cut them up.
Oh, okay.
And he was supposed to. He knew it. And he did exactly what God has intended, because they're heading toward a ceremony. He's like, oh, I know what we're doing. And then God puts him in a deep sleep, because he thought he was going to be the one to walk between the animals. It's a long story. But God walks between the animals.
Interesting.
And that's because, God says, and let me give you the idea. This is what I promised to you, Abraham. That I will bring you back. I will make you, and I will, whatever. But he says, and what it says, if you walk between the animals in the blood, because the blood is flowing down, so it's very visual. And it says, I know we'll have to do the whole thing one time, but it says, if I break this covenant with you, may I become like one of these.
Okay.
See how visual it is?
Yeah.
You're covered in blood. You're walking in blood. You got the dead animals on the side, and you're saying, I'm making a covenant with you, because if I break this, may I be like one of these. Mm-hmm. And Abraham doesn't walk through it. God does. And he says, Abraham, if you break this covenant, may I become like one of these. Wow. And that is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Jesus did it so that those promises could be true. So that the promises of God are true, regardless of our behavior. We believe in him and we side with him, and therefore they become ours. Mm-hmm. But Jesus covered that. You see what he did. That's the picture in the Old Testament continually. It's where it says, obey, you need to obey. You need to believe and you need to obey. And he calls us to obedience. And he says, if you don't, you're outside. You're not conforming to this, and I will deal with you. But there's one who will do what you can't do, who will make it all true.
Jesus.
Absolutely. And that's now we're coming to the place where, sorry, that was a long discussion. I know I'm kind of excited about it.
If I'm reading this, where do I start?
Okay, you talked about this. So you say, for if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? Now, let's give an example. So you heard something there, and now you're fleshing it out. So what you do is you go back to the beginning and say, okay, let's put it in context. One, this is from the Gospel of John, and John is written a little bit later, and he's a little different than the other Gospels.
Yep.
So, but I'm saying that because it's important just to narrow this down. And then John is telling his own version of Jesus' life.
Based on witnesses he's talked to.
Right, and his own experience.
True, yeah.
And, research, essentially. And he goes through, but he's not just telling the story. He's got a theological point. He's heading somewhere. Mm-hmm. He's teaching us. He tells us what he's doing so that you can believe several different things like that. And so you're working out, what are you saying, John? And in this case, he gets, we talked about, let's just mention some big ones, Nicodemus. That must be born again.
We talked about Nicodemus.
And the woman at the well.
The woman at the well.
And here's living water, that kind of stuff. And you see the pictures that Jesus is building on. Then we talked about the guy who's, healed, 38-year-old invalid.
Lame man.
Right, 38 years of being an invalid. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the lame man. And Jesus heals him. So that you see there's pictures, and he's building on it. And that was in the beginning of chapter 5. And now you get to this place where he's confronting, because he talked about the Sabbath. He did it on the Sabbath, and then they're arguing against him, and then he comes and begins with this discussion. Now we're to the place of the discussion. You see what I did? Now we bring it down, and I'm like, oh, I see where we're at.
So he's doing the miracles, showing who he is. And now he's talking about who he is?
But he's talking out of the context of that invalid that he healed on the Sabbath, and they're complaining about him doing it on the Sabbath.
Oh, okay.
Man, couldn't you have done another day? Couldn't you have made this guy whole on like a Tuesday? That's the complaint.
Why today? Why not tomorrow?
Right.
Yeah.
And here's the other side. Jesus did it on purpose.
Yeah, I know.
You saw that, right?
Yeah.
He did it on purpose. He's messing with them, and they need to be messed with, which is another great important point, and it's going to fit into your category, into your passage, that Jesus messes with us on purpose.
And where do you see that in those verses?
In the verses that you read?
Uh-huh.
For if you believed Moses.
He's like taking it way back.
Because they would say, we do believe Moses.
Yeah.
And that's where it's really going to be.
So
it's going to mess with us. And we should just put it down now and go eat, because it's going to cut to our heart.
So and it's interesting when you say that, because it's a touchy subject for them.
It is.
Right? It's cutting into like core beliefs and like life's work, right? I mean, these guys, some of them, right? Pharisees, right. I mean, this is what they did for a living, right?
And the Messiah was a big deal.
Yeah.
Big deal in the first century. I mean, they were arguing for it and looking for him, and there's like 23 Messiahs, or I forget what the number is.
I heard that the other day.
Something. Yeah.
It was like, I think they threw out, there was like 100 other Messiahs.
Right.
Whatever it was. But yeah, I never really...
People who showed up claiming to be the Messiah.
Yeah, I never realized there were others.
Others claimed him to be Messiah.
Obviously, only one came out on top.
Well,
because he actually came out at the grave.
Right. He did a few things.
But
this one is saying, look, Moses spoke about me. That's the verse before. And you're getting to the place where he's talking about their testimony and that he's doing this right, and they're complaining, and he gives this argument. But he gets down to this point, which to be more specific, if you wanted, you could say he argues this, he argues that, and then he gets to this point where he says, because because he's arguing about, who does he have a right to make these judgments, things like that. And he says, do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, Moses, on whom you have set your hope. You see, even he says, on whom you have set your hope. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? See, it's a powerful passage.
Well, and it also touches on, what I kind of hear in there too is we have Moses' words and writings, and we also now have Jesus' words.
And Paul's and Isaiah's and,
But
Micah.
In order to really believe in Jesus, we have to be in the text.
And you take it seriously.
Yeah.
And you that's why the text is the master.
Because he's referencing, it stands that if you do not believe what he wrote.
Right.
And he's putting weight on it too. He knows that they have, all of their weight is put on Moses and the Old Testament, and right. And he's touching on that here.
That's the only Bible they had at the time.
And he's saying also,
right,
what I say.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So it comes down, because the issue then is, so do you believe Moses? Are you putting your hope here? Because if you are, you believe in Jesus. And then you have to take that word seriously. You have to let it challenge you, because he's saying there's one who accuses you, Moses. Do you let the Bible accuse you? It ought to. Because if you let it accuse you, you respond to it and you repent and you get yourself right. It's like Nathan coming to David. You are the man. Or Samuel coming to Saul, you're the one. And Saul's like, no, just come with me. I don't care. Yeah, sure, I did bad, but come with me. And David's like, I'm a sinner. You see, one responded, the other one didn't. And you would say David's sin seems far worse than Saul's. But David responded and Saul didn't. And that's the deal here, where he says, listen, get yourself back to the text. You can go back to it and you can study it, but you have to let the text be the master. This is exactly the point. It's just that I'm not the master.
Yeah.
God is using that. Jesus is pointing and saying that text will accuse you. You put your hope. And he's talking to these Jews who lived for Moses and the law.
Yeah. I didn't see that before. That's cool.
Yeah.
He's
wow.
Yeah, he's referencing the text that they put faith in, saying that you claim this.
Right.
I am this.
And he is the accuser of you.
Yeah.
Because if you listen to him, you would listen to me, right?
There's words flowing through my brain right now, and I just can't even put them into my mouth.
Supercalifragilistic. No, not that one. That was. Right. So what does it have to do with you? Think about that. Because you have to let the text accuse you, which right here it can do. Or challenge you. We go say it both ways.
It feels like what I'm hearing and being told is put more weight on the text for your life.
And let it speak to you. You can't get around its words. You have to let it challenge you. You have to say, okay, I'll give you an example. I've been feeling, and I've been feeling a little cold. I heard
It has been raining.
Yeah, no, my heart has been feeling a little cold.
Interesting.
I don't like it. I heard of an Iranian woman. I grew up in Iran, so, but Iranian woman who was in Iran in the. I might have told you this, but was in the churches in Iran. And they're underground churches. You can have one in one house and one in the house next door, and they wouldn't even know each other there. Because
Secret.
yeah.
Yeah.
But they were alive and hungry and living for Christ and pushing each other. And this person got out of Iran, came back, I don't know, it was somewhere in California. And they were going to church, and this person says, I feel myself falling asleep.
Because
they're in church and it's
just
not alive.
It's not alive, yeah.
It's not, I mean, in the sense that, you know, it could have been this big, you know, worship place with these great speakers, but that's not life. It isn't the point of life. It isn't the point of going to church. You are in love with Jesus. You connect with him, all that stuff. And so I'm convicted and I'm like, no, I want to be alive and I want to pay whatever price it takes to be and stay alive. Keith Green has a song I always sing, and I've been singing it lately. My eyes are dry, my heart, my eyes are dry, my faith is old, my heart is hard, my prayers are cold. And I know how I ought to be alive to you and dead to me. Oh, what can be done for a poor heart like mine to soften it up with oil and wine? The oil is you, your spirit of love. Come wash me anew in the wine of your love.
That's powerful.
Very good.
What lots of imagery.
Yes.
And
self revelation from Keith Green's part. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. I just want to be washed anew. And so this is what it says. And this is why Jesus says this to these Jews. He's saying, your accuser's Moses. If you put your hope in them, just go back. Go back and read him again, because you read him carefully, you will hear me, you will see me there. If you believe him, if you let God do his work in you, that's what happens with the scriptures.
yeah.
You let God do his work. Doesn't matter where. You just say, I'm yours, and I'm gonna do what you say, and when I don't, I'm gonna confess and repent and get other people's help to get myself back right with you, and you will take me further.
I was listening, I think I was telling you, I was listening to another podcast, and
Shame on you. I'm just kidding.
I always listen to this one. I actually really enjoy it because we are quite a few episodes ahead, so I get to relive them when I release them. But talking about how he used to journal all the time and always seeking wisdom, and he's at a point in his life where he's a little tired of that, right? Because there's so much information.
Right.
And he's like, but I also feel like the Lord is taking this and giving me a break and saying to me, I've got you. Trust in me. And it was that whole, the theme of slowing down, reading scripture. We don't need to always seek the information out there. That's right.
Right.
There's a lot in this book.
Yeah.
Called the Bible.
Oh, it's powerful. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
Good passage. Very good passage.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
I got more out of it.
Me too.
As usually happens.
Me too. And that's what happens with me too. Don't think. I mean, if we talk about something, let's say I brought a passage.
Yeah.
And I bring it and we start discussing it. By the end, I'm much fuller than I was before I started. I was like, wow, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
That's the beauty, not only of looking at it more, but looking at it together.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Well, again, always good to talk with you.
You too.
Look forward to the next one.
All right.
And we'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.